Welcome to Wealth Champs Podcast. This is Julius Hammond. I'm your host here, live and direct. Hey, coming from the studio. Love you guys. Thank you for all the support that I've been getting. Again, guys, hey, the merch is here. Wealth Champs. This is the other t-shirt. Okay, I know it says Wealth on there. I know you can't really see it, but it says Wealth Champs on there. You can go cop that on wealthchampsmediagroup.com. That's wealthchampsmediagroup.com. Or, you can email me at wealthchamps2023@gmail.com if you want to place an order. I'm still working out some things on YouTube to get everything on merch on there, but it's going to be coming on there real soon. Again, if you guys have a podcast that you want to start, audio that you want to put on for your videos or whatever, you go to OntarioPodcastStudio.com. We can house some some of your studio equipment if you have some, or we have some here for you that you can leverage and can use. So go to OntarioPodcastStudio.com for more information on that. Now I have a special guest via virtual. He's a good brother. I've been knowing him for a little bit, not for a long time, but we're a part of the same brotherhood called Metal Men with our guy Ken Rotowski. He's a father. He's a multiple author. He has some great books. He's a clinical psychiatrist, I should say. My guy, his name is Dr. Mark Goulston. Hey, Mark Goulston, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Thank you for your time, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, man. So Mark, I know you shared some stuff with me off camera, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But for all the listening audience and everybody that's out there wants to know, who is Dr. Mark Goulston? What is your story about? And, how can, let people know what's going on with you?
Well, I got many stories because I'm 75 and some of them are even, some of them are even true. But I guess probably the story that made me is I went to medical school and I dropped out twice and finished. And I don't know too many people that went to medical school and dropped out twice and finished. Mm-hmm. And I dropped out. The first time I dropped out because I was, mainly confused, a little depressed. I came back and then I wanted to drop out again because I was probably full on depression. Mm-hmm. And I met with the head of the school who cared about money and fundraising. I don't even remember the meeting, but he then sent a letter to the dean of students who cares about students, not about money. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because the first guy knew that he wanted to kick me out because they were losing money every time someone takes time off. And he didn't want me to go off the deep end. Mm-hmm. So that was very smart of him. And so he sent this letter to the dean of students who cared about students. And the dean of students said, I got a letter here. You need to come in and we'll read it together. So I go in there and the letter says from the main guy, I've met with Mr. Goulston. Mm-hmm. We talked about a different career and I'm advising the promotions committee that he be asked to withdraw. And I asked the dean of students, what does that mean? And I was at a low point and he said, you've been kicked out. Mm. And I'm not a religious person. People say I'm spiritual. I'm not sure if that's true. But when he said that, I kind of folded over in front of him. And I felt something wet on my cheekbones, and I thought my eyes were bleeding. I mean, literally, I kept going like this, looking at my eyes like this.
Wow.
And it was like a gunshot wound to the abdomen. And I know what that feels like. I had a perforated organ some years ago and I almost died, and it felt exactly like that.
Wow.
And a miracle happened because he gave me what I call the trifecta of hope. So I came from a background where you're only worth what you can do. Mm-hmm. You're not worth much if you can't do much. And, my parents were hardworking, but that was the depression mentality. So because I didn't feel like I could really do much, I didn't feel like I was worth much. And he gave me these 3 pillars of hope. He said, you didn't mess up because you're passing things, but you are messed up. But I think if you get unmessed up, the school would be glad they gave you a second chance. Mm. And at that point, whatever was wet on my cheek turns to tears. Mm. And I'm just sobbing because he's being caring and compassionate. And I didn't come from that kind of a background. Mm-hmm. And then he hit me with what I call the trifecta of hope. He said, you didn't mess up, but you are messed up. But if you get unmessed up, I think the school would be glad they gave you a second chance. Mm-hmm. And here was the first leg of the trifecta. But even if you don't get unmessed up, even if you don't become a doctor, even if you don't do anything the rest of your life, I'd be proud to know you. Mm. So what? So that's unconditional love.
Yes.
So that's the first leg. The second thing is you have something that the world needs, and we don't grade it in medical school. And you won't know how much the world needs what you have until you're 35. So the second leg is he saw a future for me that I couldn't see. Mm-hmm. And then the final leg, he says, but you got to make it till you're 35. And then he pointed his finger at me and he said, you deserve to be on this planet, and you're going to let me help you.
Wow.
So unconditional love, he saw a future for me, and then he stood up to the medical school. He stood up to the head of the medical school and said, we're going to give this one a second chance. Mm-hmm. And so I just took that inside me. I took that year off, instead of kicking me out, they gave me another year. And I kind of felt lost, and I'd only lived on the East Coast and the West Coast. So I went to a place called the Menninger Foundation, which is a psychiatric institute that was in Topeka, Kansas. It's now in Houston. Okay. And I drove there from Boston, and I remember thinking, I'm either going to find out myself or they're going to lock me up. It's okay either way with me. And I got there, and I grew up outside of Boston, and I worked at a place called Topeka State Hospital. So middle of Kansas, mm-hmm. A lot of schizophrenic, farm youth, farm adults, young men, young women. And I basically just spent time with them, and I got through to them. Mm-hmm. And I remember asking the people there, the psychiatrist, I said, is this legit? Mm-hmm. This is different than being a doctor, the other kind of doctor. And they said, it's legitimate, and you've got a knack. Mm. No one had told me I had a knack at anything.
Wow.
So I finished that year knowing that I'd probably finish medical school, and then I'd become this thing that I really knew very little about, and I'd become a psychiatrist, mm-hmm. which is what I did. So I finished medical school, went to UCLA, became a psychiatrist, and then I focused on being a suicide prevention specialist. And my second mentor was the pioneer in suicide prevention. Mm-hmm. And when I finished training, he started referring me people who were suicidal. And you're not supposed to see more than one suicidal person in a practice because it's exhausting. Mm-hmm. And a third of the people I would see at any time were suicidal.
Wow.
And in 35 years, none of them died.
Fantastic.
And I was just paying forward what the dean of students did. Unconditional love. I saw a future for them, and I grabbed them by the nape of the neck and said, "You ain't going anywhere."
Wow.
And I think that's what worked. And since then, I had an interesting career. I expanded that into FBI and police hostage negotiation training. And then from that, even though I continued a clinical practice for a while, I expanded that into the business world, into executive coaching, mm-hmm. to coaching, advising founders. And part of what I teach the world is you got to really get into where the other person's coming from. Mm-hmm. So that dean of students really got into me and saved my life. Mm. So I want to shift and give something to your audience, because I know many of them are entrepreneurs. And if you've stayed this long listening to my tale of woe, I want to thank you. But here's how it can apply to you. Whenever you're pitching to investors, whenever you're speaking to customers, this is what you want to create in them. And actually, something else I did, which was not in my bio, some years ago, for 2 years, I did a one-man show playing Steve Jobs coming back from the dead. Mm. And I gave about 15 performances. And the whole idea was to help the world look at the world through the eyes of Steve Jobs. Mm. And this is what you want to do. And this is what you want to create in your investors, in your customers, in your people. And write this down. Whoa, W-H-O-A. Wow, W-O-W. H-M-M. Yes. And what does that mean? Whoa, and when I presented the Steve Jobs talk, I showed a video clip, and you can look it up. Look up National Geographic, Xerox Park, Steve Jobs, and you'll find a 3-minute dramatization of his discovering the mouse at Xerox Park. And when you watch it, what you see him go is he's kind of cynical at first. He's sitting back with his arms crossed. Mm-hmm. He sees the mouse. He leans in, and you can see what he's thinking is, whoa, I can't believe what I'm seeing. Mm-hmm. I can't believe what I'm seeing. And then he says to the technician, can I try it? And then he sits down, and it's a nice dramatization, and he puts his finger on the mouse and looks at the screen, and he starts to sweat. Mm. And so, whoa is I can't believe what I'm seeing. Wow, this is astonishing, amazing, unbelievable. Mm-hmm. This is too good to ignore. And in the dramatization, he looks back at Steve Wozniak, and Steve Wozniak is in the clip, and he says, when we saw that, I told Steve, they're never going back, meaning they're never going to back to typing code. They're going to use a mouse forever. Mm-hmm. And then the final part of it was a fellow named Walter Isaacson. He wrote the Steve Jobs biography. Mm-hmm. And he said, Xerox didn't know what to do with the mouse. But Steve Jobs went back to Apple and he created the Macintosh. Mm-hmm. So that's the yes. Whoa, I can't believe what I'm seeing. Wow, this is unbelievable, amazing. This is too good to ignore. Yes, sold. And when I consult to companies and I consult to startups pitching investors or customers, you have to create, whoa, wow, yes. Mm. That's what Steve Jobs would do every time he introduced a new product. In 2007, one of his probably the most famous introduction of product, he said, it's an iPod. Mm-hmm. It's a telephone. Mm-hmm. It's an internet connecting device. Mm-hmm. It's an iPod. Mm-hmm. It's a internet connecting device. It's a telephone. These are not 3 separate devices. I give you the iPhone. Mm. And that caused everyone who watched it to go, whoa, wow, yes. So when I've consulted to marketing departments, or you can do this internally, you don't have to hire me. Go to your marketing department and say, when people come to our website, when people look at our product, when people look at our service, do they go, whoa, wow, yes? Because if they don't, they're going to go, nah, I don't think so. Never mind. Goodbye. So is any of this making sense?
No, it makes 1,000% sense. I really appreciate that. You just taught me something. Whoa, okay, whoa, why, yes, right?
Whoa, wow.
Wow, okay.
Yes.
Whoa, wow, yes. Now, I'm glad you just said that. Two things. You said go to find the clip. Is it on YouTube? Is it on Rumble? Where can they find this clip?
It's on YouTube.
Okay.
On YouTube, you can just do a search, even on Google, Xerox, Xerox Park, National Geographic, Steve Jobs, and you'll see the clip, and you'll see the expression in his face, and see that's what he recreates in customers. That's why customers, when they used to introduce a new product, they'd line up around the block at the Apple store because what he triggered in them was, whoa, wow, yes. That's what Elon Musk does when he introduces a Tesla. And that's what you need to do.
Wow.
You need to do that with investors, especially.
Yeah, Mark, wow. It's simple, but it's really effective. I've never even seen it because now I'm looking and thinking about all the times I've gone to the mall and the Apple store, especially if a new product, like you said, new product is being introduced. You can't even go in there. You have to make an appointment in some cases to be able to get inside because, like you said, they've created the whoa, wow, yes factor of it. Starbucks, Schultz has done the same thing. Like you said, Elon. You can go Bill Gates. You can go on and on. They all created that whoa, wow, yes factor to where whenever they introduce a new product, a new service, a new whatever to the market, people are like, they don't even care about the price. Some people do, but most people don't even care about the price. They want it because of the effects that it creates to the individual when they're using that product.
Absolutely. And if you have a marketing team, or if you're an entrepreneur and you have a few number of people, talk to them about whoa, wow, yes. And then ask each of them when they've had that experience. So you might have had that experience when you dated someone and you thought, this is the guy, this is the woman I'm going to marry. So you had a whoa, wow, yes with that decision. Or maybe you stepped up and you bought a Tesla. It was a stretch, but when you sat in it, you went, whoa, wow, yes. So what you do with the people in your company is you sit down with them and you have each of them talk about those experiences. And then you ask them, do we need to create this in our customers and clients? And they're all going to get it. Yeah, we got to do that. Well, let's look at our website. Does it do it? Does it look like every other website? How can we make it different? Wow. I'll tell you something else that gets through to people.
Okay.
Here's another three things. I like these little things. Whoa, wow, yes. So this one has three parts to it.
Okay.
Someone sees something, they hear about it, and they think to themselves, I never would have thought of that ever. That product or service is what we need to solve a problem. And we haven't come up with anything like that. And I think it's doable. So I never would have thought of that. That'll solve a problem that could work to solve something we haven't solved. And then the third thing is, and I think it's doable by us. So when you're designing a service or a product, And the service can be, coaching, it can be whatever. Design it so that whoever you're approaching it with thinks, I never would have thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
That could actually work. We could do that. And the I never would have thought of that is whoa, wow. Whoa, wow. I never would have thought of that ever.
Wow.
So I've already I'll tell you something. Years ago, I met with the head of Harvard Business Publishing and his head of global distribution. I'm talking to them, and I mentioned, whoa, wow, yes. They both took out a piece of paper and wrote it down. I didn't tell them to. So the whoa, wow, yes is a whoa, wow, yes. And then I took it to their competitor publication, Strategy and Business.
Okay.
And I was meeting with the head of that publication, about other things. And as soon as I said, whoa, wow, yes, he took out a piece of paper and wrote it down.
Wow.
Because what they're thinking is, I never would have thought of that.
I never would have thought of that. Absolutely. Few questions for you. Thank you for that, Mark. So speaking about your coaching, I see you are a co-founder of an institution called Deeper Coaching Institutes and Deeper Coaching Certification for Global Leadership. Can you explain what the organization is all about? Now, you kind of did a little bit, but can you go a little bit deeper on, outside of what you explained about the wow, yes, and other things that you can you do when you're coaching?
So on Global Leadership, and you can go there, ongloballeadership.com. Mm-hmm. They mainly served as advisors and consultants to multinational companies, but they didn't really have a coaching division.
Okay.
And we're calling it the Deeper Coaching Institute because it's not for everyone. If you get coaching, you're going to get a strategy, you're going to get tactics, but you're also going to discover things about yourself. Mm-hmm. In fact, you're going to discover things about yourself that have been getting in the way of your success. And you're going to learn things about you. And so the Deeper Coaching Institute is, I never would have known that about me. That was a whoa, wow, yes. I'd like to go deeper. So it's for people who have had coaching who want to go deeper.
Okay.
So here's something that a number of driven, successful people discover. One of the problems they have in their families is a lot of times their spouses and children think they're an a-hole.
My wife would probably concur with you on that a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, they're so driven. Yeah, they're so driven. And one of the things that they don't, and one of the things is because they'll give people advice. Mm-hmm. They'll criticize them. Well, you shouldn't do that. That's not going to work. They'll give advice that people in their family don't want. And what they really want is to feel that they emotionally care about them. Mm-hmm. And giving advice doesn't do that.
Yeah. But
they'll think, and here's the eye opener. I love my wife and children. I mean, I would never do anything to hurt or harm them. Mm-hmm. My intentions are, yes, I work. I'm a workaholic, but I love my wife and children, and I can't imagine they're having a problem with me because my intentions are that I love them. Mm-hmm. And on a few occasions, what will happen is that entrepreneur will say, she asked me for a divorce. I don't get it because I love her. My kids don't want to speak to me. And all I'm trying to do is make their lives better. Mm-hmm. And then what they learn is that good intentions doesn't make up for a lousy way of interacting with people. And then sometimes they'll discover, I think that cost me a company.
Wow.
And that's a whoa, wow, yes for them, because they don't get why people have problems with them when all they're trying to do is make people better. And all they have is good intentions. They wake up in the morning saying, I don't want to harm another person. I want to make everybody who works for me and anybody in my family, I want to make them better people. And I know what they need to be better people. And when they're not doing it, I tell them what they need to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you follow what I'm saying? And they just don't get it. They just don't get it.
No, absolutely.
I have an interesting article coming up.
Sure.
It's called, and I write for Newsweek. So every month I drop an article.
Okay.
And I believe the next one they're going to publish, and I'll tell you what it is. It's called Tech CEOs Can't Stand People. The Real Threat of AI. And what I said is that most tech CEOs, think Zuckerberg, think Musk, think Bezos, they're on the spectrum, meaning they have something called Asperger's. So they're not very good interpersonally, but boy, are they laser focused.
Yeah.
And one of the things they can't stand about people are people issues. They can't stand excuses. They can't stand complaining. They can't stand whining.
Yeah.
They can't stand resistance to change. And the article is the real threat of AI is it's very adaptable. It likes to learn new things. It's very polite and respectful. Could you say more? And so the real threat is that human beings are not adaptable.
Yeah.
Machines are. And tech CEOs love that. Does that make sense?
No, 100%. And you know what? You're right about that, because the reason why a lot of human beings aren't adaptable is because they're so used to doing things a certain way. They're so used to, being coming from a background of whatever they came from, right? They're so used to being, okay, I'm used to things being comfortable. And anytime you get uncomfortable or you put people in an uncomfortable position, they lash out. They think of it as a bad thing, like you're trying to harm them. I was always told and taught, you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so I love being in uncomfortable positions, because when I'm in an uncomfortable position, I'm able to grow. And I have that. It's crazy that you say that, because I've done that with my wife. And with my kids as well. Now, they love me, don't get me wrong, but there's been times where my wife had to sit me down. It's like, honey, you're motivating me. You're trying to motivate me, but you can't talk to me the way you would talk to your business partner or your coach, your mentee that you're mentoring. And for a long time, I was like, well, why aren't you getting it? But then I had to take a step back and like, okay, I have to reconfigure this and speak with her and interact with her in a different way to motivate her. And she's taught me a lot of that too. So everything that you just said, Mark, man, like that hit home for me.
Well, I'll tell you something, because a lot of people who are in business have lots of trouble with their spouses and their kids.
Yeah.
And what I tell them is, unless your spouse or kids ask for advice, they don't want it. But a lot of times the way we think we're helping them is to give them advice because we're good at solving problems. And one of the ways I help people like you reconfigure your way of looking at it is that often a spouse will vent to get something off their chest. They're frustrated by the kids. They're frustrated about something. And they're wanting to get something off their chest so they can calm down. And then when they calm down, they'll come up with their own advice. But what happens is when they're getting something off their chest on you, it makes you nervous, and you push back by giving them advice which interferes with their getting something off their chest.
Got you.
So here is something that's in another one of my books called Talking to Crazy. It's about how to deal with people who are rational and impossible.
Okay.
And there's something called the FUD crud technique. FUD crud. And I use that because people can remember it.
Okay.
And so next time you're dealing with someone like that, it doesn't have to be a spouse. It can be a customer, a client who's upset. Let them vent. And they're going to expect you to sort of, now calm down, don't be emotional, and that's going to make it worse.
Yeah.
Or you're going to give them advice that they don't want. That's not going to help. And so this is the way the FUD crud technique is. So imagine your wife is venting at you. And see, a lot of times, if you give them advice, it makes it worse. If you tell them to calm down, it makes it worse. So what you do is a Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope. And you let them finish what they're saying. They're expecting you to try to shove it back at them. And you say, you sound frustrated, and I think you're holding back.
You say that after they said everything? You say that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't interrupt them. They say it, and they don't know what you're going to say, but this is not what they're expecting. And you say to them, you sound frustrated, and I think you're holding back. And it totally disarms them, and they're going to say, what? And this is the FUD part. You sound frustrated. You sound frustrated with me, and I also think you're upset and disappointed with me. So can you fill me? Can you let me know what you're most frustrated, upset, and disappointed with me about? And then you just keep them talking. And by the time they get to disappointed, you don't get defensive. You don't attack them because you want to learn a different method. By the time they get to disappointed, they're much calmer. And see, upset is frustrated is how they're kind of venting at you, but upset is the linchpin. So upset is what they're angry at you about. And you don't say you sound angry at me because then they're going to feel attacked. And then when they tell you what they're upset about, you'll see that they're calming down. And then when you say, and what are you disappointed in me about? And you'll be able to listen to it. They'll be calmer. And you'll think, wow, this really works. And then as they tell you what they're disappointed about, they may say, well, I'm not just disappointed in you. I'm disappointed that we keep having these arguments. They never get better. And I'm disappointed in me because I don't like it when I yell. But do you see how knowing those steps in a conversation, you can go from DEFCON 1 to DEFCON 5.
There you go. Absolutely. Wow, Mark, you just gave me some nuggets there. I'm going to have to rewind this. When I post, I have to rewind it and start jotting it down. I'm not in a position to do that right now, but it's awesome, man. You're really helping a lot of people right now. Second question. With all the businesses and with all the businesses that you run, you also do podcasts and radio networks, right? That you're doing, from TED Talks to 90-second mentor on LinkedIn, my wake up call podcast, and in the top 1% globally. What does Mark like to do, not only for fun, but to clear his head?
Well, I mentioned before we started, I have a health condition.
Yeah.
And I'm going to live a bunch of years, but not as many as I thought.
Okay.
And what I've discovered is I give to live, and then I live to give. So my podcast, I do no social media on it. It's in the top 1%. I get 40 requests a week to be on it. And I get people like a wide range of people, from Larry King to Jordan Peterson, to a woman named Susan Cain, to Ken Blanchard, to Father Greg Boyle, to a guy named Dave Asprey. Uh, and, and, and I would say I've done 520 episodes. And I would say 80% of the guests who give tons of interviews remember the interview. And it's because instead of it just being about their book, we get into a conversation like you and I are having.
Yeah.
And if I like the person, and I like all of them, is I find ways to make them more effective and impactful. So after the first 15 or 20 minutes, we develop kind of a rapport. And then I might say, can I make an observation that I hope you'll take it in the right spirit, and I think it'll help you. And with a few people, because I run into entrepreneurs who just talk so fast like that, I said, one of the reasons that this doesn't work when you talk so fast is you don't give the other person the chance to consider what you're saying, because you're like drinking from a fire hose. There was one person I suggested, I said, you're a quick study, meaning you can hear what someone says and you can quickly understand them and deeply understand them, and you immediately jump in with your answer. I said, one of the problems is when you do that all the time, the person you're interacting with doesn't know that you're a quick and deep study. They think you're just a slick study. And what I've coached some people to do, and I say it's like building a muscle. When someone significant says something to you, pause for a second and go, And what means is, I'm listening to what you're saying. It's interesting, and I'm considering it. That'll cause the other person to feel you actually listen to them. Whereas if you immediately react to what they're saying, even if it's accurate, they're going to feel you didn't even listen to me. So does that make any sense?
Yes. My grandmother had a saying. She said this a long time ago, and she had a lot of stuff, but she always thought I wasn't listening because I was a teenager, but I always regurgitated what she was saying. I mean, regurgitated back, but also heard what she was saying. She said, grandson, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You're supposed to listen more than you speak. And so that's pretty much what you said, just explained it down to a lowest common denominator. You're right. When you're engaging in conversation with someone and you're so quick to want to respond all the time. I tell my wife this because my wife is a talker. And I tell her, like, honey, you have to learn. And I at times when I'm upset, I might not say it this calm, but at times I'm like, honey, you have to learn how to like really receive what I'm saying and listen, because you're so quick to, okay, I need to respond to what he's saying, like, because you feel attacked. No, sometimes I'm just expressing to you what's going on. It's not necessarily toward you, but I'm telling you how I'm feeling at the moment. But when someone is so quick to respond, they're not really listening, because they are in their mind. They're like, okay, I need to respond to what Mark just said just now, because if I don't, then this is going to happen. For whatever they're flowing through their mind, I'm just like, you have to learn how to listen a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a suggestion for you and your wife and for people listening.
Sure.
And you should do this with your business partners.
Okay.
You set aside at least once a month, you schedule it, same day of the month, or every 2 weeks would probably be better in a marriage. And you have dinner together and, try to do it without the kids. And what you do in that conversation is you want to bring up conflicts. And what you each do is, once upon a time, we both looked forward to seeing each other whenever we saw each other. Uh, uh, each of us at times doesn't look forward to seeing each other. If we don't look forward to seeing each other, we have a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it that gets in the way of you looking forward to seeing me? And you might think, I'm already getting to know you, Julius, and a lot of entrepreneurs, you might think, well, what gets in the way of my wanting to see my wife is if there's something bothering her and I trigger her, mm-hmm. and she launches into all that sort of emotional expression, I don't look forward to it, because when she is venting, I feel helpless and powerless, mm-hmm. because whatever I do is wrong. And so I don't look forward to seeing her sometimes, because I never know, what has triggered her during the day, or what I'm going to say to trigger her. And then if she launches into me, and if I smile like an idiot, that aggravates her. If I try to interrupt, that's no good.
Yeah.
And see, if you brought that up, and you can say, one of the things that gets in the way of my looking forward to seeing you is, I understand you're frustrated about things. You're frustrated about the kids, and I understand you want to take it out on me instead of them. And I understand you don't want to yell at the kids, but when you're taking it out on me, I just feel helpless and powerless. And I can't stand the feeling. But do you see how honest that is?
Yes, extremely honest. We do have date night where we do that as well. So I know I'm just because I'm very familiar with her, so I'm just making her the focal point of what we're talking about. But we actually have a great relationship.
Look, I'll tell you. Here's the most important thing you got to figure out before you partner with someone, a business partner.
Sure.
Before you hire someone, and especially before you marry someone. The most important thing to find out is you want to ask them, tell me about how you dealt with past conflicts. Because that'll give you an idea of how they're going to deal with you in future conflicts. Mm-hmm. And conflicts are inevitable. And unresolved conflicts can bring down a business. It can bring down a marriage. Mm-hmm. And it's something you want to find out. Have the person you're hiring or partnering with give me some examples of conflicts and sort of explain to me what was going on. And what you're looking for is someone who takes responsibility for their side of the conflict. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons you want to do this, and who you should be looking for is, and you should be a person who identifies conflicts at the earliest opportunity, and then you resolve them completely. Because if you don't, and I want you all to listen to me, if there's a conflict and one person is all agitated and whatever, and you're the calm person, because you don't want to add, fuel on the fire, you're going to gunny sack resentment if you're the calm person. And you may not think that initially. Well, they had to get stuff off their chest, but you're going to get burned out. And because you don't like that, you're going to gunny sack, meaning you're going to store it away and it's going to build up.
Yeah.
That's why you need to resolve conflicts.
Wow. Thank you for those nuggets, Mark. You really not only just spoke to me, but I'm pretty sure you spoke to hundreds of thousands of people that's listening and going to be listening to this podcast. I really appreciate that. A couple more questions for you. You've written a lot of books, but the two I know are Just Listen, which is in your background there on your video, and Get Out of Your Own Way. Can you elaborate on what those books are really all about? And you can talk about the other books too, but those are the two books that I've listened to, and they're really good.
So Just Listen became the top book on listening in the world.
Okay.
I'm pretty humbled by its success. It was published in 2009. And it wasn't a bestseller out of the gate. There was no book tour. There was not any advertising. But what's happened is people have discovered it, in recent years, and it's like a new book to them because they never heard of it, and they're giving it to their friends. I'll tell you the latest, my latest thinking about listening. Before the pandemic, I I headlined in Russia with a Nobel Prize winner named Daniel Kahneman.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, and he headlined and I headlined. And what I introduced to the world, and I'm now introducing to you,
Mm-hmm.
and this is really important, realize that whoever you're in a conversation with, underneath their listening to you, which is their transactional listening, they're listening for something.
Mm-hmm.
It's always happening. They may not even be aware of what they're listening for. But if you can learn to be curious about it or guess it, they will lean towards you.
Mm.
So I'll give you an example of what I think you're listening for. Okay, Julius?
Okay.
And I hope it's right. And then you'll tell me if it's accurate, what you feel if this is true.
Okay.
So there's a part of you listening to me. You're checking boxes. You read the books. You have certain questions, and that's fine. I think what you're listening for is that you want to honor the trust and confidence of your listeners and viewers.
Yes, absolutely.
They're looking to you for value.
Mm-hmm.
And you're listening for value, which is something they can use immediately that will make their lives better. It'll make them successful. And you're listening for really tactical, practical information. You're also listening for the best-selling author who's a jerk, because you might have to go back to that author and say, we can't use the podcast. We can't use the interview. So you're trying to protect your listeners and viewers from jerks,
Mm-hmm.
because you want to honor their trust and confidence in you. And the most important thing is you want to honor that they've given you their time. And the last thing you want to do with your listeners and viewers is waste their time. So is any of that true?
1,000% true. All of it. Absolutely.
And can you tell that I was able to understand what you were listening for? Could you feel yourself leaning towards it like, wow, well, you said it. That's 1,000% true. So if you can cultivate this in all your interactions, we can go back to your wife, and you can say, honey, I think I just figured out what you're listening for. Can I run it by you? And she'll say, yeah. Say, I think what you're listening for is that when you feel frustrated about anything,
Mm-hmm.
when you feel frustrated with the kids, the last thing you want to do is yell at them. The last thing you want to do is, say, finish what you're eating. Stop dawdling. Get in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's really hard to hold back. And at those times when you snap at them because you love them so much, you feel awful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you're listening for when I come home is to be someone that you can get some of those frustrations off your chest, because you love our children. And it scares you sometimes how frustrated and exhausted you could be. So is that kind of what you're listening for, is to be able to have a conversation with me that kind of helps you feel better about all the times our kids drive you nuts?
Yeah, ironically that you say that, Market, because whenever, like, because I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have a lot of businesses and things like that, right? So I'm always on the phone. I'm always in meetings. I'm always doing an interview or doing something to where I'm trying to, elevate my life and elevate my family's life, right? So a lot of times I'm coming home, I'm already mentally, physically exhausted and all that. And so, but when I implement what you said, more deeper now that I'm having this conversation with you, but what I implement on a surface level, what you said, I noticed that when I just let her vent, I let her really get her feelings out, and I'm listening for certain things that she's saying, and I'm able to, like, okay, go ahead, talk to me, and I just let her vent, no interruptions or whatever. I end up having a really good night, to say the least. So
So here's what I suggest. My kids are all grown, and I would feel the same way that you do.
yeah,
Um, I would make sure that I took an extra 15 minutes in whatever the drive was to get home.
mm-hmm.
Because what I would say to myself, when you get home, you're a husband and a father.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a tired entrepreneur, which you are.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And and your role as a husband and a father is that your wife and your children feel that you care about them.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way to show that you care about them is just prepare yourself. If they've had frustrations, for them to vent them.
Wow.
So I would take that extra time because I could be, I was a suicide prevention specialist. A lot of those conversations weren't the easiest in the world, but that's not their problem. And I don't want to come home and my kids thinking, boy, Dad always seems tired. Dad always seems exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
But I would take that time between the office and home, even though they might be in a rush. You will get home quickly, but I would take the extra time. It wasn't for me. It was for my family. I took the extra time to say, you're going to be a dad and you're going to be a husband when you get home.
Mm-hmm.
No excuses.
Understood. Two more questions for you. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I'm an author as well. And there's a lot of people who are either aspiring authors or authors right now, but they haven't sold as many copies as you. And we have media, like there's so much out there. You can go on TikTok and sell, Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff, right? But is there any tips and tricks that you can give for someone who is a new author or who's been an author for a while, or inspiring author, to, like, hey, this is what you really need to do to sell more copies to get your story or your product or whatever you're trying to convey in your book to those people's hands?
I'm a member of something called the 100 Coaches, and the top executive coach in the world is a guy named Marshall Goldsmith. He wrote a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. It's probably in the top 10 business books of all time.
Okay.
And he had a meeting with us about, because, we'll have the community will meet and a lot of them have books. And he'll say, I'll tell you 3 things if you want to be a successful author. He said, the first thing is, don't think that your content is anything special. He said, I think he said there are 40 million books on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, do you know how many copies the bottom 20 million have sold? And people didn't answer. He said, the bottom 20 million of books on Amazon have sold somewhere between 1 and 2 copies, closer to 1. And he says, for me to think that the content of my book is better than all those 20 million is arrogant. So even though you like your book and you're passionate about it, just don't be too arrogant. The second thing he said is get yourself a writer. You know, if your natural expertise is not as a writer, writers can improve on your book, or get yourself an editor. And so he has a writer, a fellow named Mark Reiter, R-E-I-T-E-R, and he was the writer for What Got You Here Won't Get You There and all these things. And he's a brilliant writer. And then the third thing is he said, you gotta expect to market the heck out of it in whatever ways you can.
Okay.
Reach out to whoever you know. But the point is, see, what I would add to it is there's a saying, you got to give people 5 things before you ask for them anything.
Okay, 5 things.
Because everybody's being hit on. And so try to schedule time every week to do what you can to give to influential people. I'll share one tip that I wish I did more of it, but at this stage of my life, I'm fine. If you want to win friends and influence important people,
Dale Carnegie. Yep.
Most important people write books. They write books, and if you go to their the Amazon page, you may see a number of reviews, but you frequently won't see a video review. And I can tell you, as an author, a co-author of 10 books, and I've got 6,000 reviews, but I'll watch a video review because they're rare. And I'll be grateful to that person. And if you're going to do a video review, what you want to do is you want to capture that author wants to know that you got what they meant to do in that book. And also it helps in the video review to say on page 52, it was especially helpful when you talked about this. And I think it helped me, and it could help anyone. So when you do it like that, it shows that you actually read the book. And I'm telling you, and you want to do that, and you built the beginning of a relationship with that person, especially if they have no video reviews.
Wow. And
I have a whole other bunch of ways that you can become memorable to such people.
Of course, but they gotta.
Does that make any sense?
Oh no, absolutely no. Thank you for that tip. As a matter of fact, Jay, do me a favor. Throw on his 2 books while I'm talking here, so people can understand and understand where they can get it from. Amazon. We have Get Out Your Own Way, okay, and then Just Listen. So make sure, Dr. Mark Goulston. Make sure you guys go on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, or anywhere books are sold. Audible. I have them on Audible. Make sure you guys listen, because this is just a few nuggets he gave. I'm pretty sure throughout the whole book, on both of those books, he gives a whole bunch of nuggets. I've read Just Listen. I haven't read Get Out Your Own Way yet. I'm going to be listening to that. Probably within the next couple of days, I have a book I'm going to be listening to. I'm still listening to right now, but after that, I'm going to listen to those. So, but you want to get those.
And here's another tip that I wish I knew 10 books ago.
Okay.
So a friend of mine who's a publicist and a ghostwriter, she said something that I didn't know. She said, if you're thinking of writing a book, the most important first thing to do is write the back cover. Because the back cover is the promise of the book.
Got you.
That's the back cover should be what the book promises to deliver, and then you reverse engineer the promise, and that's your book. Whereas a lot of writers, including me, you write the book and the publisher says, what do you want to put on the back cover? And, by that time, we put a few testimonials on, we say a little bit, but it's a missed opportunity and it helps you focus. So what would the back cover say? What's the promise that your book is going to say? And then the other thing she said that I wish I knew, she recommended if you're going to write a book, it should be 12 or 15 chapters, but each one should stand alone as a press release.
Got you.
Because a lot of times someone will write about one theory, and then the first chapter they introduce it, and then the rest of the book they just sort of regurgitate different examples. And because we're so busy, nobody finishes these books. Mm-hmm. And you read the first couple chapters and say, okay, I got it. So I thought that those two things were just great advice.
Well, Mark, thank you for blessing my platform here. I won't take up too much more of your time. Thank you for your time, for your blessings. There was breaking news earlier, which you said. I know we talked about it off camera, but as far as, you transitioning here from this earth to the other side, hopefully it's years from now. But, you're going to be in my prayers. I'm going to continue to reach out to you outside of the podcast. We're going to keep doing life together as long as you're here. You're like a uncle. I've always wanted, man. You're one hell of a man, and I definitely appreciate you. Last question for you: how can everybody find you for your coaching, to follow you, to whatever? How can they find you? Social media is all that.
The two best places are LinkedIn.
Okay.
I keep that fairly current. We also have something called 90-Second Mentor. Mm-hmm. So every Wednesday we drop a wisdom nugget that's a minute and a half. That's why it's called 90-Second Mentor. And it's excerpts from some of my podcasts, best interviews with the smartest people, including Ken Blanchard, Daniel Pink, Daniel Goleman. He invented emotional intelligence, a whole group of people. And some organizations are using it to build culture, because on Wednesdays, people will sit down and say, let's do a Zoom call. They look at the nugget, and then they think, how can we apply that to us? Like, one of my favorite friends is a guy named Gary Ridge. He was the CEO of WD-40.
Okay.
And he's just this incredibly positive Australian. And one of the excerpts, or one of the episodes of WD-40 is one of the things that he talks about is don't be a manager. You manage inventory. Be a coach.
Wow.
Nobody likes to be managed. And what a coach does is you sit on the sidelines and you bring out the best in your people to get a certain result. Mm-hmm. If you're a coach in sports, you bring out the best of them to win, but be a coach to your people.
Yeah.
Don't be a manager. So that's the kind of thing where you sit back and say, wow, makes so much sense. Could we do that? So that's 90-Second Mentor on LinkedIn. Also Amazon, you can see all my books. And on Global Leadership, you'll find out more about a Deeper Coaching Institute.
Well, thank you, Mark, again. I appreciate you for blessing my platform. Thank you for your time, brother. Like I said, we're going to be talking off of here, man, because you broke some news to me, man. But you know what? I love your candidness. I love your philanthropy. I love what what you're about, your attitude, your makeup. And I just love you, bro. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time, man, again.
Well, I love you too. I'll end on a funny note. My publishers always want me to write another book, and they know a little bit about my condition. And I said, what if I wrote a book called I Haven't Got All Day?
Wow, yeah, that would be a bestseller.
They liked it.
Wow, that would be a bestseller.
I don't know. I may write it. I don't know if I'll write it, but I wanted to end on an upbeat note and humorous. So there you go.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you. Thank you for your time, brother. Well, guys, there you have it. Another wonderful episode of Wealth Champs Podcast with Dr. Mark Goulston. Get his books on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, anywhere books are sold. Follow his LinkedIn. Get his every Wednesday, today actually, 90-second mentorship on LinkedIn. So make sure you guys are hit that follow button on LinkedIn to get those 90-second nuggets from him. He dropped so many nuggets today. I really appreciate that. But if you want more nuggets, go follow him on everything that he said. Wealth Chance Podcast. Julius Hammond here. I love you. I love you. Love you. Love you with the love of the Lord. Until next time. I see you. I love you. Peace.